Hello. Welcome to this very non-aesthetic setup. But you know what? That's just me. I am not a very aesthetic person. Um, I'm reading Infamous by Lex Croucher right now. I'm halfway through, just about, and the pacing of this book is so weird. So let me just give you a general synopsis. So it follows our two female main characters. We have Eddie, whose real name is Edith, but no one calls her that, and then her best friend Rose. We literally open in the book to them like practicing kissing in a treehouse. You would think that they're 8, but she's like 22 or something. Now I don't know if that was a flashback or not because you can't really tell. Like she gets scolded later for like hanging out in the treehouse. Oh no, they were like 22 at this point, practicing kissing. I think for Rose it was practicing, and I think for Eddie it was her acting out on her crush because Eddie has it bad for Rose. Will she admit it? Absolutely not, but she definitely does. And she's freaking out because Rose, being the responsible one, is starting to think about marriage and what to do because this is a historical romance. I should have opened with that. She's giving Lizzie's best friend in Pride and Prejudice, where she's like, I'm already 27 and I'm a burden on my parents and I'm frightened, Lizzie. Don't judge me. That's what this is giving. Now, Rose has, I think she could have better prospects. She just chooses a man that she knows is known to be kind. Her parents like him. He's older. I think he's like 36. And so she's kind of committed to the idea of marrying him. Eddie's having a really hard time with this. And in the process of this, they go to a dinner party somewhere, and she meets this guy, Nash, who is a poet, who Eddie's obsessed with. Like, she's known his work for a very long time, has grown up with it. And I think he's around the same age as this Albert guy. I think he's around 36. Anyway, Eddie's obsessed with his work, loves him. Eddie writes short stories, and so she's trying to impress him. All that to say, I think the bulk of the story is happening now. I'm at the 46% mark, and they have gone away to Nash's country house on sort of like a writer's retreat, if you will, because he invited. So his wife is there. His friend Kitty, who is a artist, she does a lot of like silhouette and portrait drawings. There's another guy there whose name I forget, who's also a writer. Eddie's there. Rose and Albert are there. Neither of them are artistic, but they're there to basically chaperone Rose because she's a 22-year-old woman in a Regency era romance, so of course she can't go anywhere by herself. The pacing of this was weird. I wasn't sure that anything was going to happen between Rose and Eddie because we're 46% of the way in, and it just didn't feel like that at all. Like, you could tell Eddie obviously has feelings, but like she doesn't act on them. She doesn't talk about them at all for the most part. And when she does, it's very like it almost comes across like just a jealous best friend rather than somebody who like has romantic feelings for her friend. And I get part of it is the time, and sometimes when you're reading stories about potential queer love interests for Regency, there isn't that same overt expression even internally because obviously it's not normal for the time and there's a lot of concern there. But Eddie, I think, is just lost in the way that 22-year-olds can be lost. So I don't know that she even knows what's going on. But now things are starting to pick up. They're starting to pick up. I almost DNF'd this actually because it was going so slow, but then I just kind of knew, like, no, just keep on to it. I had the same feeling with Reputation, which was the first book in the series, but I had less problems with the pacing in that one because that one was more about, or I should say, it had a more solid friend group. Kind of that same thing where there's like this like ensemble of people, but it's really only about one or two people. And in that process, there were so many other events and things happening to keep you interested, while the overall plot moved forward kind of slowly. But like I'd say normal pacing for a Regency. But because there were so many other things going on to kind of keep you entertained along the way, it was easy to stay committed to the story. Whereas with this one, it didn't feel that way for the beginning part. It just kind of felt like the same things were happening over and over again. But now we're into a spot where different things are happening. Rose almost drowned in the lake that this house is on. It's like on an island, kind of, in the middle of a lake. It's a strange setup. It's a very weird house, has a history of weird things happening there. Like the previous owner tried to die on the property. Was a rumor, but they also said he had a bad heart. So I don't know. It's Nash's dad. It's like Nash's property now. I guess like a housemaid passed away there, and so like there's just like rumors going around about it. But this vibe of the story is not one of I feel like we're gonna get a paranormal house or thrillery. It doesn't really fit that. So I think this is just kind of like a red herring. But I don't know. It's keeping me interested right now. I am going to make a cup of coffee and some breakfast and keep listening to this. And then maybe I'll update you around the 75% mark. I don't know. Depending on the pacing, I might just wait till it's over and just give you a full review. Because right now I'm around that 50% mark. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I am more interested in the second half. Okay, I'm only like 5% more in since the last time you saw me. I have made a coffee at this point. And, wow. Yeah, things have progressed. There has been more kissing and not of the practicing kind. Also, Nash is hella sus. I don't trust that man. I don't trust him. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I don't trust him. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I don't trust him. Hello. I just finished Infamous by Lex Croucher. And I now understand why it has like a 3.3, I think, average review on Goodreads. Because the first half was a solid, like, honestly, 2.5 for me. It was really slow and felt a little meandering. And then the second half was like a solid 4 for the most part, even though everything that happened were things that I predicted in the first half. But how we got there and the character growth seems like a strong word because it was such a short amount of time. But maybe revelations and learning made the expected outcome acceptable. Like it, yeah, I don't know. How do I talk about this without spoiling it? Let's just say that the writer Nash was exactly who I thought he was going to be, and we hate him. Rose and Eddie's relationship progresses in a way I think Rose had always hoped. I was a little annoyed with how dumb Eddie was throughout the story. She doesn't come off that way initially, but as it goes on, you're just like, you're not a stupid person, but just obvious shit would go right over her head. And it just kept happening and happening and happening, and it just was very frustrating that like people were telling her like, hey, this is the way it is, and she just couldn't accept that until whatever the thing was happened to her, and it just kept happening and happening and happening, and so that was really frustrating for me. So yeah, I think this is a 3-star read. It was fine. I will definitely read from Lex Croucher again. My hope is that if they continue on with this series, which I believe there's supposed to be another book next summer. I recently saw a photo of the cover on Goodreads. I don't know if that's like the legit one or something somebody imagined, because I don't know how published books get their photos on Goodreads. Like, I don't know if that has to come from the publisher or if it's like a anyone can upload situation, but it looks in the same art style of these, so I'm assuming it's the third book in the series. Feels like there should be a loose term because none of these people have been connected as far as I can remember. It's more just the type of story that they're telling and that kind of deal. But yeah, all that to say, I would read from them again. Really enjoyed my time with Reputation, so my hope is that the next book is in that similar vein. I don't know what I'm going to read next. I've been sitting here trying to figure that out. I have so many books on my TBR that I need to read. I was supposed to read something set. I actually have this physically right here. Love at First Set by Jennifer Dugan. I have this ready to go. This is a sapphic romance, which I clearly am in the mood for because it's why I picked up Infamous. And I didn't really get the itch was not scratched while reading Infamous. So maybe it will if I read this. But I also am in a very crafty mood. I'm crocheting. My order for new what are these things called? Cables for, I have an interchangeable knitting needle set. But the cables that came with it, I needed one that was shorter, and so I just got my short cable, and so now I want to start on the project that goes with that. All that to say, I need audiobooks if I'm going to keep reading at the pace I would like to keep reading for the rest of this Memorial Day weekend, while also not having to sacrifice crafting. So I need to figure out if my library purchased the audio, because Love at First Set came out this past Tuesday. So it's a very new book, and I don't even know if the audiobook's available for it. That's been a thing recently. Like, I know it was a pandemic thing for sure, where audiobooks for books wouldn't come out until like 6 months after, you know, the hardback or paperback had already come out, depending on the genre, which is really frustrating for me because if I'm not reading on my Kindle, I am a very huge audiobook reader. And honestly, last year, I want to say something like 82% of the books I read were audiobook for the format. So huge audio person. And part of it is this: I like to do something with my hands while I'm listening. Helps me keep my brain occupied, or not occupied, but like lasered in and focused on what's happening in the story. So yeah, so I really want that, but I also kind of want to go outside and maybe go to the pool, because it is Memorial Day weekend and my apartment pool is open after they do the like post-winter cleanup and get the balance of the water right and all that stuff, and it passed inspection. So I want to go down there. So maybe I will read the physical copy just so I can have that. But again, I prefer to take my Kindle down there, partly because it's waterproof. I hate to get a book wet, you know, and that would make me really sad if that were to happen. So I don't know. I need to figure that out. I also need to eat lunch. I just realized that I haven't eaten today, like unintentionally for sure. I've been on this journey to make a sourdough loaf, which I can show you here in a second. It's cooling on the counter. I cooked up a pack of bacon earlier because I like to cook it in the oven, and I knew that like that sourdough loaf was going to be in there for a hot second and at 500 degrees. So I was like, I can't do that at the same time. Otherwise, I would have just put them in there together. And I ate like a strip of the bacon after it came out, put that away. But I wasn't really hungry at the time. And then I started doing other things, and now it's 1 o'clock, and I haven't eaten, and I'm starving. So I think I might go to like Chipotle or something, pick a little something up, see if the pool is busy, because I also don't want to go if it's like slammed with kids, because there aren't a ton of kids in my complex, but they all come out when the pool is open. So I'm going to check that out. And then I will update y'all here shortly with what I decide to do, and then what I decide to read. Because I also have some things on my Kindle that are not sapphic, but I have had on my TBR. Like the last book in the Salacious Players Club. I want to read that. I just finished I think there's 5 total. I finished book 4 like 2 days ago, and I was, prior to that one, like going through them really quickly, but now I've slowed down a lot, and part of it is just because I just didn't, not that I liked the last one, it was fine, but I didn't love it that much. And honestly, it's kind of what happened with the second one too, right? Yeah, I liked the first one, didn't really like the second one, liked the third one, didn't really like the fourth one. So if that is going to keep up its pace, if you will, then I will likely enjoy book 5 a lot, because I've liked 1 and 3 the most. So that's the hope anyway, is that just kind of continues on. But I don't really know. Oh, you know what? Also, there's a new J.T. Geisinger book out, and I love J.T. Geisinger stuff. And I honestly think that after the tone of Infamous was unexpectedly dark on the back half of it, and I actually could be really open to that as a mood. And J.T. Geisinger writes, well, the J.T. Geisinger stuff I have read is like barely dark romance. Like it's definitely gray, maybe dark gray, if you will, but it's not super dark, because I don't really enjoy super dark romances, and that's not like a a diss on the genre. It's just like I can only go so far personally, just on my own preferences. But I liked her. It's like Beauties and Monsters or something series. I liked that series. And this one's the first book of a new one, and it's called Morally Gray. And I don't know anything about it. I just knew that J.T. Geisinger put out a new Morally Gray book, and that's all I needed to know. So I want to read that. And I also have the new Elizabeth O'Rourke on my Kindle as well. Also don't know what that's about. Doesn't really matter because I love Elizabeth O'Rourke, and I will always read whatever she puts out. She writes such great indie romances. She's one of those authors that you're just like, how are you not more popular? Like, she's just so good. Actually, her, I don't know what the series is called. Maybe it's I don't know that it has the actual name. I always call it the Devil series, but they're the books that got me started reading Kindle Unlimited books. It was last summer, and I read A Deal with the Devil, and I was obsessed. And then I read, I think, The Devil You Know, and then I forget what the third one was. And then I got an arc for the fourth one, which is like my least favorite trope in any romance is like a pregnancy related trope. But she handled it so well, and I knew, I was like, if anyone's oh no. I pulled the bread from the oven too soon because, as you can see from the top, it got very dark, and so I put the lid back on, and I left it in there for another 10 minutes or so because that was like of the time it was supposed to cook. And it's just, it's a very moist dough. It's not supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be light and airy, and this is not that at all. It's very heavy. Flavor-wise, it's perfect. It's great. The problem is that this took me 18 hours to do. So obviously, I can't really just start that over again in the same way. I'm not going to throw this away. This will probably just become like croutons and like breadcrumbs and stuff, and live in my freezer for a little bit. But what I think I am going to do, I found a like same day option for a loaf. I'm sure it won't taste quite as developed, but I do have a very healthy starter, so I could go through and do that because I did want fresh bread available to me. The real question is, will I start again today? God, the crust is just so, like, look at that crust. Such quality crust. Man, that tastes good. I don't know if I'm going to start that, like, it's already 1:30. Am I going to start that right now? Or do I cut my losses and then do it again tomorrow? I don't know. I'm going to step away from it for a little bit, go get some food, and come back and decide. And maybe by then I will also decide what I'm reading. You know? Who knows? I finally decided what I'm going to read, and it's none of the things I mentioned before. Because that's just how that goes. A few weeks ago, I was talking to a friend of mine about doing a buddy read with her. And we talked about doing Anna Wong's Twisted series. So we are definitely doing that right now. So I'm going to start with whatever the first one is. I don't know if it's Twisted Games or Twisted Love. Maybe I'm wrong about both of those. Updating your Kindle experience. Okay, thank you. Okay, 4 books in the Twisted Love, a brother's best friend romance. One of my favorite tropes. I know nothing about this series. I keep seeing these reels that are like, how would I describe them? It's literally just terms of endearment for the female main character by the male main character, and almost all of them start off with each of the male main characters from Anna Wong's books. and then they'll move on to something else, but they're always like dark and or morally gray romances. So since I did say earlier I'm in the mood for that, I do want to read J.T. Geisinger's thing. But one of the reasons I really enjoyed my last reading experience from her is that it was a whole series that was done already. So I was able to just kind of marathon them and go through. And this one's the first book of a brand new series. And while technically you don't have to read her books in any kind of order or anything, at least for that series that I just read, everything's so tied together. And usually she puts some sort of nugget, so it's not quite a quick cliffhanger, but it is just enough to make you want to read the next one. And I want to find out if that happens in this one first. So I've been like looking at a couple of those Goodreads reviews and like DM someone I know who's read it already. So I'm waiting for her to tell me if that's the case, because if it is, I think I might wait. The next book for it, I think it's supposed to come out this fall or winter. So what I might do is hold off and have that be like a September, October read, and then only have to wait, like a month for the next book to come out. So I might do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to read Twisted Love, which apparently is only 360 pages, which is great. So download now, please, Kindle. I love a short book. I say short. Sometimes I'll pick a Kindle Unlimited romance and it'll sound good to me, and then I'll look and it's like 650 pages. And I often will read it anyway, but it's like nice when you get one and it's like a pleasant surprise of like, oh, this is under 400 pages. So I'm going to dive right in. I'll let you guys know how this goes. Hello, happy Monday. It is Memorial Day, and I have spent most of my morning reading. I started Twisted Love. I think that's the first one by Anna Wong. Twisted Love, a brother's best friend's romance. I'm 50% of the way through, and I'm hoping that the second half is better. Don't come for me. You can just tell it's the first book in the series. I don't know if this is Anna Wong's first book, period, or if it's just the first in the series. But you can just tell that she's trying to find her, like, tone and pacing. They had, like... Okay, so let me give you the premise. Ava lives right next door to her brother, Josh. She's a college student. I think he just finished school, or he's doing, like, a gap year or something. And he's moving to, like, do, like, basically a Doctors Without Borders situation. He is a medical school student, and he's taking a gap year. And he is worried about leaving his sister alone. He says, like, she's too trusting, and a lot of bad shit has happened to them as they've grown up, so he feels really protective of her. And he asks his best friend, Alex, to essentially keep an eye out for her while he's gone for the year. So Alex decides he's going to move into Josh's house. Because Josh's house is going to be vacant for the year. It's right next to Ava. He's like, this will be fine. It's 25 minutes away from DC, which is where he works. So he's like, it's not a huge deal to commute into the office. And so, they act like they hate each other. She clearly, at the very least in the beginning, has a schoolgirl crush on him, whether she wants to admit it or not. And he has that. She's my best friend's annoying little sister, but also there's something about her. Also, she's my best friend's little sister, but also she's not a child anymore. Kind of back and forth. Things are happening. We're now at the point where, like, they're hooking up. They be fucking. And it's just not... It's fine. Like, there was a decent intensity about them in the beginning. Like, these moments would happen. But I feel like instead of continuing to build that pressure and then for us to get a scene where they're finally together, there were like these bursts of pressure and then not, and then bursts of pressure and then not. And then after a moment of not, she finally decides that they're going to do that. And so it's just kind of, I don't know, like I said, it's the pacing. The pacing's weird to me. Generally speaking, I really enjoy them. I like that she brings out, a side of him that's hopeful, maybe a wrong word, because I don't know that Alex has ever felt hope in his life, but she lightens him up a little bit in the way that the sunshine often shines on the grump. So yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely going to finish it. I'm interested, honestly, in reading the rest of the series. I said I was budding reading this with a friend, and then she texted me last night and goes, I realized I read this a few months ago, so I'm going to start the second book. And so I'm trying to catch up, essentially. And I'm already 50% of the way through because, for what it's worth, it's only 360 pages, and it's a really, like, easy read. And there also are a lot of these scenes where you're getting either flashbacks for Alex because he has, I forget what the term was for it, but he basically has what people think a photographic memory is, but what it actually is. Like, he doesn't have a photographic memory, he has this other condition. But essentially, he can, like, replay his life like a movie in his head. Which, you know, to those of us who can forget things, sounds kind of cool until you remember that, like, you're also going to be able to replay all the worst moments of your life. And Alex has had some very, very terrible moments in his life. He witnessed the death of his entire family. His parents put him into hiding, like, somewhere in the house, and then they couldn't hide fast enough, or, like, with his little sister. And so he literally saw all of them get murdered, which is terrible. And that, like, he sees that in his head, and he's, like, on this revenge plot, which is, like, his own separate storyline. And then Ava, I don't really know what her separate thing is. Like, they keep harping on the fact that she wants to be a photographer, and she works in this art gallery part-time in addition to going to school. But I don't know that that's going to matter at all by the end of the book. I feel like her stuff is more about her own PTSD. She has a lot of nightmares. Those also happen on Paige. Her mom had some mental health issues and tried to drown her as a child. Well, I don't know if she tried to drown her. She pushed her in the lake knowing she couldn't swim. So you would think that means that she tried to drown her, but it's hard to tell, like, what state her mom was in because you really only get those scenes, at least so far, from Ava's perspective, and she was, like, 6, I think, when this happened. And her dad doesn't really have the warmest relationship with her. Like, he just doesn't really speak to her a lot, or he does, like, kind of, like, grunts and looks and whatever, and it's hard to tell if that's, like, just his way with her, or if, like, there's, I don't know about animosity, but, like, just general difficulty and maybe guilt, because that happened while he and her mom were split, and he took her brother with him, but she stayed with their mom, and I don't really understand why you would split your kids that way, but whatever. And so I don't know if he just feels guilt for, like, not being there for her when she needed him most, even though he's the one who, like, got her out of the pond when that happened, but I don't know. Like I said, pacing's weird, and I just don't really know where this is going. I can't tell if this is going to be one of those books where you're going to get, like, 3 smut scenes total, and it's going to be, like, all plot, which is, like, fine in general. That's just not the way that this is, like, marketed sometimes. I say marketed as if a, you know, publishing team did this, and more so by what happens on Bookstagram and BookTok. So I don't know what's going to happen here. And I'm trying very hard to care, if I'm being honest. I just don't care right now. So what I did while I was walking my dearest dog is I started an audiobook because I got my Holden from the library, and I never remember the title of these because they're always so long. It's a historical romance by Amanda Collins. It's called An Heiress's Guide to Deception and Desire. It's the second book in the Ladies Most Scandalous series. Funnily enough, I've read the first one and I read the third one. And you can read these in any order. It follows a different person in the friend group, and so it's like, you know they're all going to be happily ever afters anyway, so, like, it's fine that it's out of order, honestly. But this one follows Caroline Hardcastle and the new Viscount of Rackham. They had a thing, like, a while back. I don't know how long it's been. I feel like it's been at least a year and a half. But they kind of had a thing. And she's lower class than him, and she overheard at a party, like, they had been having their thing, and I think they were betrothed, and then she overheard him in a room in a party with his dad, and his dad made some snide comment about her being, like, a social climber or whatever, like, basically insinuating that, like, that's all her mom wants for her, which is not false, and that she's trying too hard, and that whatever family, if she's able to successfully go with her mom's scheme, whatever family she marries into, like, she's going to have a hard time because, like, there's obviously the class separation and they're going to treat her like shit. And he doesn't defend her at all. Now, to be fair to him, they had agreed to keep their betrothal secret until they were ready to, like, bring that out in the open. And so he said, like, well, I didn't say anything because we talked about this being secret and I didn't want to do that to you, like, at that time. And she just couldn't accept it, and so she breaks up with him. And so now you have this thing where, like, they're in the same friend group. So, like, they're around each other. And the story opens when her and oh god, I forget what the other woman's name is. Um, her and her friend are sitting to tea, and their other friend is supposed to meet them. I think the other friend's name is Effie. Yeah, she's an actress. She's supposed to meet them for tea. She doesn't show up, but her maid shows up like in a tizzy. Is like, Effie didn't come home. Um, Frank came home, which is the Viscount's like younger cousin or something. And she's like, he's here and he's all beat up but he's unconscious and can't tell me what happened, and like she's not here and she's supposed to be here, like she was gonna come home and change and come meet you guys. And so now they're onto the mystery. The friend who's I can't remember her name, she's married to a guy who works for Scotland Yard. So she goes to get him. They go to the house and like now where the mystery is unfolding. So it's like two side by side things because you have like the plot of like their friend is missing and seemingly in danger, and then you have the plot of excuse me, Caroline and the Viscount potentially rekindling their romance or fixing their relationship. Who knows? I'm only 20% into that. I really enjoy Amanda Collins' work, so I'm sure I'll have a good time with that. But I will keep you updated with what goes on. So, hi, happy Tuesday. That feels like Monday because yesterday was Memorial Day and I had the longest day back at work ever. I just DoorDash dinner because I have no energy, and they decorated my bag all cute, my name and stuff. I don't think you can see that. It's like hard to see. Anyway, never seen that before. So I finished both the books that I was reading. I was reading Twisted Love by Anna Wong, the first book in the Twisted series, and then I also read A Lady's Guide to Something and Something. Let me see. I always forget the names of these by Amanda Collins. An Heiress's Guide to Deception and Desire. Let's start with the bad and then move on to the good. So Twisted Love. I rated it 3 stars on Goodreads, but it was more like a 2.5. I don't know why everyone loves this book, if I'm being very honest. It may be one of those things where people love the series, and so they more highly rate the first book when they read it. But I can see a lot of potential, but it wasn't there. The pacing stayed weird, didn't make any sense. Their feelings felt like ill-timed in the development of those and like the way they were expressed. I absolutely abhorred Alex for like half the book. And normally like I'm into morally gray main characters, but honestly, it felt like at times I was reading two different stories and they just kind of got cut and put together. And it was just really rough. I just didn't love it. I felt really bad for Ava. Nothing but bad shit happened to that girl this entire book. And honestly, girl, like, he's not worth it. None of it's worth it. Move on. I did start the second book, which is about her roommate, Bridget, who's a princess, and I think her bodyguard. And so far, the start of that is a little better. The banter is there. And I will say, she wrote conversation really well, which I think is what kept me in it. A lot of the dumb shit I hate in morally gray books where, like, the female main character is, like, kept out of the loop, but then also treated like she's dumb, didn't happen. There were times where Ava was completely out of the loop, but Alex never treated her like she was stupid. And so it was easier when the conversations were happening to stay engaged because, like I said, he just didn't treat her like she was dumb. And so it was easy to stay engaged, but I just couldn't keep going. Or I could keep going. I just couldn't get into it any deeper than that. Like, when that wasn't happening and other things were just being told. I'm sorry, my eyes are, like, burning right now. When other things were being told to us instead of, like, shown. Yeah, told instead of shown. There was a lot of that, too. I don't know. The whole thing was just weird to me. So I finished that as quick as possible, and then I moved back to the other book, which was An Heiress's Guide to Deception and Desire, which I actually ended up loving. That was such a fun little mystery element in a historical romance. To recap that one was about our heroine. I was about to call her Evie, but I don't think that's her name. Caro, short for Caroline. And I always forget the guy's name that she's married to, but I know he's a Viscount. I loved their relationship. Theirs was a second chance romance. And normally I hate those. I think the reason this worked for me is because it was a historical romance, and in historicals, there's just such a limited amount of things that you can do and have them be semi-realistic. And the reasoning for their breakup was premature and really could have just been a conversation. And I think that's why them getting back together made sense to me, because he fixed the things he needed to fix. And then he spent the rest of the book being in awe of her. And I just love that. I love when that shit happens, especially in historical romances, because women are so often so underestimated in those. And so it's nice when you have an author who takes it in a different direction. The underlying mystery was that her friend Effie, who was an actress, was missing for unknown reasons. Her fiance, or her betrothed, if you will, was the Viscount's cousin, who cousin brother in that way. When you grow up in certain families, your cousins, especially when they're close in age to you, may as well be your siblings, and that's the kind of the relationship they had, especially because the Viscount had just recently lost his brother, which is how he became a Viscount, because he was the spare, and now he's the heir. And so he was super close with his cousin. His cousin then goes missing. And so there's just this whole saga. And then in the midst of them trying to figure out what happened to her friend and his cousin, they are found in a compromising position. And he goes, I'm going to do the honorable thing and marry you. But he doesn't want to marry her because it's the honorable thing. He actually wants to marry her and has this whole time. And I mean, they were betrothed before. So them getting together for him was a win-win. And for her, she had very reasonable apprehension that gets worked out. And then the rest of the time, it's just them being them, and you get to see a lot of that on page, and it's great. And I really liked it. I really, really liked it. I gave that one 4 stars. And I don't know what I'm going to read next, because, like I said, I started Twisted Games, which is the second one, and that one's about Bridget and her bodyguard. And then I also started the last book in the Salacious Players Club. I only have read 15 pages of both of these, and I don't know if I'm in the mood for either of them. So I think what I might do is a try-chapter situation with both of them, but get to maybe the 20% mark in each of them, and then kind of adjust from there and see how I feel. And then if I'm still not into it, then I might just pick up another historical romance, because that seems to be working out really well for me. So with that being said, I'm going to eat my dinner, and I will update you later.